So around a week ago, the website Bounding into Comics released an article titled, Marvel Studios producer considers it a red flag if prospective writers are fans of original comics, prefers to hire someone, quote unquote, who's out of the culture. Now this topic has been making the rounds, plenty of YouTubers have covered this, but I think I have a slightly different perspective on it. And you guys in the comments will let me know if you agree or not. And this is going to be a quote by Nate Moore, who has worked on a number of Marvel films to include Civil War, Black Panther, and some of the Avengers films. During an interview, he was asked if, quote unquote, some kind of Marvel boot camp or something that you do with these filmmakers to ingratiate them to this world and knowing all the things they need to know, to which the producer confirmed, not really. He'd go on to say, one thing I think is interesting, and specifically for writers, I would say, is that a lot of times we're pitched writers who love Marvel, and to me, that's always a red flag. I don't want you to already have a pre-existing idea of what it is, because you grew up with the comics and that's what you want to recreate. I want someone who's going to be hard on the material, who can go, what is this? I think there's a movie here, but maybe we should go looking at it in this way. He goes on to say, I think that's important to be able to go, look, the source material is great and I love it, and comics work great in the medium they were built in, but that's not a direct one-to-one translation to the best version of the movie. And sometimes it takes someone who's out of the culture to go, hey, I know you think it should be this, but maybe it should be this other thing. And they kind of go on and on a little bit about different adaptations that they've changed, but you get the point. And I want to apologize for my voice. I just woke up, so hopefully that doesn't affect the quality of the video too much. But going back to this topic, I don't think this is newsworthy. And yes, I realize how it looks for me to say that while making a video about it. But I know what kind of content gets clicks, though watch me get no views on this video. But yeah, I don't think that a Marvel producer coming out and saying that they don't want writers who are into the source material is new information. Yes, I suppose that it is satisfying in a masochistic kind of way that someone at Marvel has admitted how little regard they hold for the source material that they made billions of dollars off of. But is this really news? It's definitely not the gotcha moment for the Marvel executives that people think it is. I mean, they've been pretty open for years about how they prefer to deviate from the source material. At least, it is a gotcha moment of the normies who constantly argue about how accurate the movies are when it suits them. But yeah, the MCU has been doing this for years, and for the sake of this video, I'm not going to go talk about Phase 4. Those examples are so egregious that I don't find them worth mentioning. So no, let's go back to Phases 1 through 3. Let's look at two prominent examples, those being Avengers Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War. Age of Ultron is pretty simple, because the comic book story versus the movie version is an entirely different animal. The only similarity between the two is that it stars Ultron as the villain. They literally just use the name recognition of the Age of Ultron story to make the second Avengers film seem important. Civil War is a little bit different. They hit the core idea of the government trying to register superheroes to control where, when, how a hero can be a hero. And of course, you had the conflicting ideologies of Cap and Iron Man. You even had an accident that set it off. The accident in the comics was caused by a somewhat amateur superhero team called the New Warriors, causing the destruction of a school full of children, which leads to Iron Man proposing the Superhuman Registration Act to get ahead of the problem. Cap takes issue with forcing heroes to publicly identify themselves. Lines are drawn, sides are taken, hundreds of heroes and nearly as many villains take part in battles in New York City, with heroes and villains on each side. But at the end, nobody wins. There isn't a happy ending. The Registration Act goes through, and Steve turns himself into the authorities, after which he is assassinated, causing Tony Stark to regret having started the Civil War in the first place. The movie was quite different outside of the few similarities I mentioned. The quote-unquote accident was a hospital blowing up or a refugee center, something like that. Thunderbolt Ross, now the Secretary of State, sets up the Sokovia Accords instead of Tony Stark, named after the disaster that took place during Age of Ultron. A similar ideological conflict brews between Tony and Steve, and the film ends with neither character genuinely getting what they wanted. However, the premise, plot, and villain of the film are quite different from the comic. You see, even though it seems like Steve is fighting against the Sokovia Accords, nearly the entire film sees him fighting Tony to keep Bucky out of prison, who was framed for blowing up the UN building by Baron Zemo, who we'll get to in a minute. In this building was T'Challa, the Black Panther, and his father T'Chaka. T'Chaka dies, leading to Black Panther taking Iron Man's side, and Spider-Man joins the fight towards the end of the movie. Still, even when you add those two, it's basically just one 6-on-6 fight towards the end of the film, nothing compared to the number of large-scale battles, property damage, wounded heroes and civilians, and even a couple of deaths. T'Chaka's the only one to die, and he was only in the movie for a few scenes. Rhodey gets paralyzed at the end, but a few minutes later he's walking due to the miracles of science. So there weren't any real consequences for the story that actually had to do with the plot of Civil War, but rather how things needed to be set up for Infinity War. And all the events in the film happen because Zemo, who isn't a dastardly Nazi villain, but just an ex-soldier who lost his family during Ultron's attack on Sokovia, sets all this up to get the Avengers to destroy each other. Now, if you can believe it, Captain America 3 was originally going to be a Serpent Society movie, which I would have preferred over this bastardization of Civil War that basically served as Avengers 2.5. Then, of course, you have smaller examples of changes with phases 1 through 3, like changes to Tony Stark's origin story taking place in the Middle East instead of Southeast Asia, Captain America not having fought alongside the invaders and Nick Fury during the Second World War, Thor not being an actual doctor when he was sent to Earth to learn humility, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy film didn't include the entire original roster created by Peter Quill in the comics. I could go on and on. The point is that the MCU has deviated from the source material from the beginning. Did they stick closer to the comics in phases 1 through 3 than in phase 4? Absolutely. Can we hope for a return to an MCU where they faithfully adapt the source material? I seriously doubt it. Hell, they didn't even accurately adapt Kamala Khan or Riri Williams. Will people continue to see these films and then complain about them? Yes. And I don't see a problem with that. When you are told that you're going to see a particular character in a movie, then you expect to see that character. When presented with something that looks and acts nothing like what you were promised, you have every right to complain. If you're on the side of people who say stop giving Disney your money and time if all you're going to do is hate their products and make yourself miserable, I agree. However, though I do share mostly complaints when I review most of the franchises that I used to enjoy, I always hold out the tiniest bit of hope that things can get better because you can't give up hope entirely. We need things to look forward to. We need good stories to enjoy and should not give up on those stories and characters that have been with us since we were kids. It's the mark of the greatest heroes from any era that they believe that there is always hope. We can keep our favorite stories, but we also shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that what the Marvel Studios producer said marks a change of any sort. This isn't news. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Also hit that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.